nice to be here. Yeah, where to start? Chaos. That was my first question also when they asked me to say something about it. How do you start a talk about chaos? So what's the first thing you do? And even the start of the presentation, I thought like, okay, how do I start? Do I start with a white slide, for example? Or do I start with a black slide, or directly with chaos with a lot of, like it goes already like this? You know, how to start? Do I start with noise? Do I start with the white and then the black chaos in the word? It's what is the beginning? What is the beginning? And at a certain moment, I came up with a story again, which I wrote from a book, and I want to start actually with that. So there we go. Before the ocean and the earth appeared, before the skies had overspread them all, the face of nature in a vast expanse was naught but chaos uniformly waste. It was a rude and undeveloped mass that nothing made except a ponderous weight, and all discordant elements confused were there congested in a shapeless heap. As yet the sun afforded earth no light, nor did the moon renew her crescent horns. The earth was not suspended in the air, exactly balanced by her heavy weight. Not far along the margin of the shores had Amphitrite shredded her lengthened arms, for all the land was mixed with sea and air. The land was soft, the sea unfit to sail, the atmosphere opaque, to naught was given a proper form. In everything was strife, and all was mingled in a seething mass. With hot the cold parts strove, and wet with dry, and soft with hard, and weight with empty void. So this is a small part, the beginning of the Metamorphose van Ovidius. And it's a book from the Greek mythology, where all the stories are about, for example, Orpheus, King Midas. It's like this collection of stories, and it starts with this. And I thought this is really interesting because in this beginning, there's actually everything. There's, it starts with a nothingness, but there's also everything is already in it. And for me as a director and composer, this is also the beginning where I always start with. There's nothing and there's everything. I can create everything I want, and at the same moment there's still nothing. And the fun part for me was when they asked me to say something about chaos, when that would have been like a year ago, I think I would stand here completely different. Because probably I would have like a page with everything written out. I would have prepared myself that I can say every word, and so I can have everything under control. And at this moment, the only thing which I have is this small card. So bear with me, if I forget it, I can still have my small card, to have somehow control over the situation still. But again, what I said like a year ago, I would have prepared everything. But at the moment, more and more slowly during my process, during my bringing everything together in my art, I noticed that more and more I became somehow a slave of my own concepts. And I want to bring you a little bit on my journey somehow, how in my perspective, in my view, how I deal with the situation, and how I think also not only for the art that you're making or whatever you're doing, that it can be a kind of broader view that you can bring with you also in your life. So for me, how it started actually, to have a little bit of background, is that I started at the theater school in Maastricht, first as an actor. And there directly I already felt like I wanted to have control over the situation, so I really wanted to become an actor. So I was really playing my ass off to become like a good actor, which not really helped because I was completely forced and I was playing like this. And slowly after a year, I noticed like, okay, this is not good. I become a director. So I don't know if that's a good situation because I had the same there. I became really forced, like I become a great director. I want to, when I'm working with my actors, I want to do the best and to really give them all. Well, in the end, all went well. I finished the school and I went more into opera directing. But what I noticed more and more is that when I was also at the theater school, as the name also already says, it's a theater school, and I was directing opera. So that was not really matching. They were a little bit like thinking in boxes. So I was searching more for how to become an opera director, how to compose with that. So I went to the conservatory in The Hague. And there I learned to compose myself. I learned the language to speak with composers and to direct more operas. But at the same moment I was also busy with actually rock music. So also there I was not really fitting the contemporary classical music. So in the box of that. So again, more and more I was busy with that, and I was not only boxed by the institutions, to say so, but again I was also boxed by myself, like how to deal with the situations and how to deal with my own art. And I think you can even see it in a little bit in the things which I was making. Literally, I placed people in boxes. Not that I was really aware of that, but when I'm looking back, it's like really having that the people somehow trying to have control over it, and that people can't get out, and that they don't have the freedom somehow. Have to see what comes. Yeah. So somehow I give one more example. At a certain moment, it became so a bit tough on me because I was working on a project, and again, working in opera and film, you work mainly with big teams, which is really interesting. But if you're quite stuck in your own concepts, it can become like a problem. So, for example, I was busy with a production which I don't call the name of, but the text was not really working. And at a certain moment, I thought like, oh, this writer is not doing a good job, and I thought like it's like almost his fault that this production can't go on. But at a certain moment I thought, okay, but it's also somehow my responsibility as a director, because if I had 2 years like working towards this concept, towards this production, and if I'm noticing that some things are not working, it's my responsibility also to react in the moment onto it and see how to correspond to that, instead of pushing constantly my own thoughts into the production. So more and more I was searching somehow like what to do with that. And I brought somehow the element of the glitch into my work. And a glitch, perhaps maybe some of you know it, like glitch art is a kind of art where you try to make the faults, like the things that are going wrong, you bring that into the work and you use it actually. So what I did here in a project was that I was beginning with really high definition photographs. It's for a music video which I made, and I brought more and more the glitch into it. And at a certain moment I brought all the material in the computer, and I let the computer go totally crazy with it. Oh yes, there we are. And you get a kind of crazy glitch art from it. But still, it was still quite conceptual, because I knew what to do with the material. I was bringing the glitch into it and lose control somehow with it. But I had really strictly planned when I would do it and how to do it. So it was really still really a conceptual thinking. And therefore, I, at a certain moment, decided to go to the Film Academy here in Amsterdam to do a master also in that, to really bring this total composition which I was searching for. And the first thing actually that which I was working on, was to make a kind of remapping of myself. And what I did, I placed myself in the middle, and all the things which I was busy with composing, with the interdisciplinary work, so with film, with music, etc., I placed all around it. And I thought, I mean, it can be like this, that I'm in the middle, but I can also, of course, change everything around. I mean, here are some inspirations, and here are some music which I'm busy with. But it's like how the perspective that you take on your own map, actually, that you're making. And at this moment, this was my perspective, which I thought, okay, this is interesting. And while being busy with that, I was talking more and more with colleagues about it, and at a certain moment also about what I said, about the glitch and how to somehow get more into bring even more loose my own concepts. And to make even a step further, I thought at one moment to a certain question, I thought, okay, what if I say, like, I'm researching somehow how to jazz my system, like this system, how to jazz my own concepts. And with jazz, I actually mean the improvisation structures. So in jazz, you have, for example, you can have the chords in a progression, but in between, you can still have the improvisation. In between, of course, with every jazz improvisation, you need some kind of rules. And these have to be really clear. But within, you can become to play, and you have to be in the moment to really have a dialogue with each other. So I began to search for more inspiration around that, and also in other artists. And I found Jackson Pollock, for example, which for me at certain moments, the work itself is a kind of improvisation. The rules that he has is that, of course, he has his the paint and the colors of the paint that he chooses. But the way how he then brings the paint onto the canvas, how it will be on the canvas, he doesn't know. So the work itself becomes a kind of improvisation. He doesn't really have control over it. Another good example for me is, does somebody knows this one? No? It's from John Cage. And John Cage was a composer who actually brought chance into his work. Which means that he, at a certain moment, for example, probably, maybe some of you know the composition for 33, which is a kind of piano piece where the pianist is going to sit behind the piano and sits there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And that's it. So he doesn't play, it's just being there. And the surroundings, the music of the surroundings actually becomes the composition itself. So you don't have control over what you really hear. It's more about the way of thinking, of course. Thinking about the concept and thinking about the composition. On that, I began to make my own kind of small etudes, which I like to call them, like compositions, small music experiments. One of them was, for example, I gave myself the exercise to go to a location and to get my mobile phone and to make pictures of everything which I saw. Just, I mean, I see here the photographer, I would make a picture of the photographer because I'm seeing him. Then I see this man, I make a picture, etc. I would go on like that. And I thought, okay, that's one thing. Okay, now I want to have some movement into it. So I was going to make kind of burst photos. You know what it is? Like making a lot of pictures at once. Like, and from those pictures, I constantly choose one picture. So there was a kind of thing that I didn't have control over what I really was shooting, but then I took control over it again. And then I placed all those pictures into the software, and I began to bring those pictures together to make a new collage out of it, like a new montage of those pictures. And then I get something like this. And I mean, it's just an etude, it's just like trying to play with the material. But the thing is, with the thought is that you constantly have to remap your own concepts. Constantly you have to reposition yourself towards the work which you are creating. The same as with this. This was a small, also an etude, which I made with some friends, filmmakers. And I asked them, okay, let's come up with a sentence around the theme of the plague. The plague itself is already like quite chaotic, the disease. And I asked them to say everything like a sentence in their own language about the plague. Then I began to do some movement exercises with them, so to be more aware of their own body movements and the body movements of the other, and also the space. And while doing all those movements, created by themselves, I asked them again to get their own mobile phone and to film them, each other and themselves. So at a certain moment, I get like 8 perspectives, which I didn't have under control because I had no clue. And I begin to somehow montage those images, somehow to bring them together. I don't know if the work is like perfect. That's I think is not really good. But the thing is, it's more about the mindset also with them, and also about how to again reposition yourself and to deal with the chaos in itself. One last example, and to make it a little bit bigger, because these were small etudes which I made, and also some small etudes which I did by myself with a small group of people. This project is like happened a few weeks ago, and it was with students from the Theater Academy, but it was also with a few mime players, and was also with the VR Academy. So it was directly a kind of big group, which was more getting towards what I was searching for, like how to deal with a big group, and how to still have the freedom while you're conceptualizing something. Because what I notice as a director, when you come up with something and it gets more and more form, everyone gets his or her opinion about it, of course, and you have the danger that it becomes chaotic in itself at a certain moment. So how to, again, have the balance between the control and losing control over it. And with this project, it was with the students, and we began with the situation of an album, a concept album, of Laurie Anderson. Some of you know her. It's like a performance artist, a composer. She just had also a VR installation at the Eye. And we took her last album, her last concept album, which is called Landfall, and which is about a hurricane in New York in 2012. And it was, of course, a lot of devastation there. And she made this album about the different perspectives on it. And we took this album as a kind of inspiration, and we began to have some words around it. And I asked the students actually, okay, because of course I had directly a whole vision about it, like how we should do it and how to make this whole production and fit everything together. But I tried to not do that for myself. I thought like, okay, how to ask them what do they see and how to really incorporate what they are thinking. So at a certain moment, they came up with the words, they came up with all the visions around it. And more we try to put that together, and also with the mime players to really build something together. And for me, as like the perfectionist, it was really exciting, of course, to not, what I said, like somehow find the balance to not control too much, but also letting it go. And at a certain moment, we had just like 6 chapters around this production, and then you could montage it, make like a one performance out of it. And that was a really interesting collage in the end. Does some of you know this picture? No? Well, this is actually one of the pictures around, I mean there are a lot, but this is around the chaos theory. And what it's for me strikes, or what for me is interesting, is that actually it is about a double pendulum, where the first pendulum is when something really small is changing in the first pendulum. The second one will also change and can create a big change. And that's something which I think for me strikes the most in the examples also which I gave, is that when you are working on a production and something small is changing, for example, when I change the music or when I change something with the performance, the performers, everything can change. And if you're too fixed on the concept which you have in mind, if you already know, like in my example, I want the performance to move exactly like this, or I want to be the music exactly like this, etc. It can be anything. then you're stuck into your own concept, and you see if something small is changing, and that can be something from the outside. It means somehow that it helps you to be stable, to be open towards the chaos, towards that. And I thought this is actually for me a beautiful picture how that represents that in a certain way. And to come back to where we started, at the beautiful picture of the universe and the cosmos, where also the metamorphosis was starting, is in the end for me, personally, it goes all about perspectives. The metamorphosis, what the name itself already says, it's about you're going towards something which you had in mind. It creates something, but everything is already there. And the things you give energy, that will grow. So the perspective that you take, the things you give energy, slowly everything will grow from that. And from that moment, something else will come. So the constant metamorphosis in that, that helped me as not only as a composer, director, but also in my own life, to breathe more and to be open also to go in dialogue with my actors, with the composers, with my team, but also in the world around, to be open and see how the things can change. And therefore, I think this whole perspective, which I'm telling from my perspective as a director, is not really about being a director in that sense. It's more about a kind of mindset which we can have together to go in dialogue. Have said, how do you say, like having said that all, this is still a little bit prepared. You know, I thought about it, I thought about what I want to say. Somehow I took my card, which I didn't use now, but still I had my card for everything that if something would happen. Although I think what's chaotic in that, I mean, where's the dialogue between me and you in that sense? And so therefore I thought, okay, maybe it's good to do an experiment and do an exercise together. And therefore I put a small card on the chairs, and in the back cards still. Maybe you can give them, they're not so much. And what I want to suggest is that we all stand up to have a little bit good energy. Yes, it's early, but we get the energy now. And maybe some at the back can go even a little bit more in the back, so we can look on each other's cards for the ones that don't have cards. Oh. Yes, very good. So I will stand here, so I can see everyone a little bit better. So this is an exciting thing for me too. I have no clue what will come out, really. I have no clue. This is also the first time that I will do this. So it's really between us that we're going to try this. So you see on the cards, there are some numbers. You see, for example, 30 or 45 or whatever. And then there's a letter. The numbers are seconds. What will happen is that I have a clock which will run from 1 minute to 0. And when your number is there, when there's 30 seconds or 44 or whatever, then you get to the letter. The letter, I will tell you, is the A will be a clap. So you will do a clap. So let's do that. When A is there, let's clap all together. Go. Exactly. Well, that's good. B, we will sing a tone, and it can be all, like, doesn't matter, high, low, whatever. So let's do it, 1, 2, 3, B. Beautiful. A little bit louder, once more, yes? Really good. And we can do it really direct, like, and then so really tight, yeah? All right. Then C, we say a word. And it can be any word, so that can be just the first thing that came up your mind. Wall, white, man, whatever, yeah? So there we go. C. Really good. So, I will say it once more. Here we go. A. B. Can be shorter. Here we go. A. B. Oh, perfect. C. There we go. D. Perfect. So, chaos happens. So, is everyone ready for it? Can everyone see the timer? No? Oh. So, I wish you all good luck. I'm going to listen. So be precise, because it goes really fast, and be really precise. And then we're going to make together this total composition out of nothing, out of chaos. We don't know what happens, but we make together this structure. Ready? There we go. So really good, really well done. Like applause for yourself, really good. So to give you a small example for me, what I would do now. What I would do now is that I hear this beautiful composition that you made, and then I would say, okay, now maybe we can make the sounds a little bit harder or a little bit softer, or we make the sounds really high. So now from all this material you can compose, which I had no clue what we can do with it, but from nothing we can really create now something together. And I thought that's a beautiful end to start the day with, and I wish you all a really good day. Thank you.
We do have some time for questions. So if anybody has a question for Robin, please go ahead.
Yes.
You started how last year you would have come prepared and scripted and everything, but that's not the case this year. So I wonder what changed in these 12 months for you to do what you do.
Yes, what I said, I tried to loosen myself up somehow, that I noticed that I became like the slave of my own concepts. So I became really stuck into my own mind. And at a certain moment, I really forced myself to be more embracing. It sounds stupid, but it is like embracing the chaos. So be more open for what the unknown, and also not knowing it with my actors. So when I would work with my actors and they say something, I just sometimes also say I don't know it, and that would be fine, because new things then will happen, and they come up with ideas. And I try to come up with the small rules which I talked about, to also create this space somehow. To create a space where you still have, of course, you can have it a little bit the overview of control, but there is space to breathe, instead of like being like I have to be prepared of everything. And that's created for me the mindset to do so, and to really just do it. But that was a big step to do so. Yeah, that took me 12 months or longer still. Yeah.
Would you say that because you were becoming a slave of your concept, you're also enslaving the people that you work with. Is that something?
Yes, I do think so. Yeah, and I think there's a danger, not a danger. I mean, everyone works on in his own way. But for me as a director or composer, I think it's nice to give space towards the actors and composers or whatever you work with. And it doesn't all have to be as a director, but it's in every field. I think when you give space to the other people, new ideas will come up, and you will be surprised yourself too. And that's something which I try to do, and therefore have more space. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still catch yourself up on being inside the box, or you just overcame it somehow and now you know it before it really starts?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there are moments that I'm still like, oh yeah, now it happens again. There we go again. I had to prepare for one project, a concept, and then I was thinking for 5 hours only like this behind my computer. And I thought, oh no, there we go again. This is not the way how I should do it for myself. But I'm noticing it earlier, and so I can do something with it. I think I will develop further during the years that come. Yeah.
Yes.
Say you end up putting some set of rules before you explore the chaos, and does that let you repeat the same, let's say, experiment or same project by changing the amount of rules or the amount of chaos that you put in, and see what comes out?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a nice thing, because now, as for example, what we did just now, we had those things like D is jumping, for example. Well, we can change D into that it's a turn, whatever. So we can change with the rules that we made together now. We can have small changes, which becomes a new work in itself. And we can form it in different ways at a certain moment and come to a fixed form if we want so. But we can also, create new rules or do it in small groups that we say, like, okay, like there are 5 people who are doing only A and 5 people who are doing D. So there are a lot of possibilities to compose with the material. And I think that's really nice in that way. Yeah.
Any more questions? That was good. So yeah, thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you.